Since 1947, the world has been fascinated by the prospect we have been visited by extraterrestrial beings. Opinions vary as to what their agenda might be, but there are some who believe that question has already been answered. In fact, there are those who are certain that aliens have met with those in the highest levels of power, and a deal has been struck to allow their agenda to proceed with impunity. It's further said that in 1954, such a meeting took place, and it would answer the question, who is really in charge here? This is extremely strange. Following World War II, General Dwight D. Eisenhower was a much sought-after figure for both the Republican and Democratic parties, who recognized both his service to the country and wild popularity among the citizenry as a potential boon to their respective parties' political ambitions. During that time, the outgoing president, Harry S. Truman, had awarded Eisenhower with the Distinguished Service Medal on 3 separate occasions. Theirs was a good working relationship until Eisenhower declared his candidacy for president with the Republican Party. This strained the relationship between the two, and Truman campaigned vigorously against Ike. Upon winning the election in 1953, one could assume that Eisenhower was briefed on UFO intelligence gathered under the Truman administration, which included the now infamous Majestic 12 documents. Also, the 1947 Roswell incident had taken place under Truman's watch. It's been suggested in various circles that Eisenhower took great interest in UFOs and the possibility they are being piloted by extraterrestrial beings. And that's a likely position for any individual who has sworn an oath to protect all citizens of the United States from potential threats, both foreign and domestic. I suppose you could add non-terrestrial threats into that mix as well. In February of 1954, while golf vacationing for several days in Palm Springs, Eisenhower departed one evening after dinner at the Smoking Tree Ranch where he was staying. The press following him on his golf junket were puzzled and curious as to his abrupt and early exit. This clandestine disappearance set tongues to wagging, and wild speculation ran rampant. Within an hour of his departure, the Associated Press prematurely reported that he had died of a heart attack that night. No doubt those at the AP desks were literally tripping over themselves to retract this statement within 2 minutes after it went out to wire services, when it was revealed that someone was merely engaging in some gallows humor that went too far. Eisenhower was not seen again until late the following morning, when he was spotted attending church in Los Angeles. Addressing the president's unscheduled absence later that morning, spokesman James Haggerty announced that Ike had made an emergency visit to dentist Francis A. Purcell, as he had chipped a tooth while eating a chicken wing at dinner. While reports of his death were greatly exaggerated, those would pale in comparison to another even more peculiar theory as to why President Eisenhower, on the night of February 20th, 1954, suddenly took his leave from Palm Springs. It would be said that on that night, Eisenhower was called away to an emergency meeting on a matter of extreme national security. While alarming, updates on potential threats were considered part of the job. But in this case, the party or parties requiring his attention were not foreign adversaries, but aliens from another world. Now, how this story gained traction and subsequently became stuff of legends, it all comes down to who you want to believe. But there are a couple of versions for your consideration. One is told by a retired British test pilot who claims he was present at the meeting and felt a responsibility to tell his story at his advancing age before taking it to his grave. The pilot said he was summoned to the clandestine meeting due to his expertise in aerodynamic design. After the president arrived at Edwards Air Force Base, where the rendezvous was arranged, A group of extraterrestrials disembarked from their crafts, of which there were 5 in total, 3 circular and 2 elongated. They approached the president, and in some accounts, it was said they momentarily vanished from view by, as it was described, somehow cloaking themselves. If that was done to get everybody's attention, you got it. The aliens seemed capable of breathing Earth's air without the need of a helmet or other apparatus, and they were quite human-like in appearance, including height and build, though their features were, in the pilot's words, somewhat misshapen. They were friendly, spoke English, and expressed concern over what they felt was the United States' reckless foray into atomic testing. They also wanted to begin small steps in letting the people of Earth be aware of their presence. However, Eisenhower, in a very forthright manner, claimed the masses were not ready for this type of disclosure and felt strongly it would result in widespread panic. The ETs appreciated and understood the president's position and agreed not to let their presence be known in such an overt manner. But, over time, they would maintain contacting isolated people as a means of announcing their arrival. This seemed to satisfy Eisenhower, but he emphasized no such program should promote panic and fear among the masses. Before they flew off, they displayed some of the technological advances of their civilization, one being that ability to vanish in plain sight, which was said to greatly unnerve the president. As they disembarked from the base, an aerial show was conducted for those assembled, quick stops and starts, and maneuvers at incredible speeds to demonstrate their craft's abilities. One can only imagine that the general consensus among the military personnel there was, "We are so screwed." A variation on this story comes in 1993 from Dr. Hank Crastman of Encino, California, who told Unexplained magazine that he was present for the meeting in his capacity as a young 19-year-old sailor in the Dutch Royal Navy. Crastman was an intelligence officer that dealt with matters surrounding the NATO pact as well as CIA business, and at this time was serving as an adjutant to his ship's commander. He remembers being briefed about a top security meeting that would take place the following day. The next morning, he and others were ushered into a van with a military police escort from Long Beach Navy Base to Edwards Air Force Base, where they arrived at approximately 10 a.m. His party was shown to a hangar at the far west part of the base. Among those attending, Crastman recognized President Eisenhower, along with iconic physicist Albert Einstein, former Axis scientists Werner von Braun and Victor Schauberger, and billionaire and aviation expert Howard Hughes. He was especially puzzled as to why, in his words, 2 Nazi war criminals, von Braun and Schauberger, were present, as the young sailor knew only of them as enemy scientists who were responsible for the deaths of many of his countrymen. Crastman overheard his commanding officer being briefed about 5 alien ships being hosted in a different hangar, and that the alien pilots would soon demonstrate the capabilities of the craft. While he was not allowed to enter the hangar, his commander returned, looking very pale, not disclosing anything he had just witnessed. The next day, large crates were loaded onto the ship Crastman and the rest of the crew were taking back to Holland. He claims he discovered later that the crates were sent to an abandoned underground coal mine in Limburg that was serving as a secret NATO base. Crastman would eventually emigrate to the United States in 1959 and continued his effort to find out what really happened that day. A different version of the event states the first public disclosure of the meeting came from a man named Gerald Light in a letter dated April 16, 1954, to Meade Lane, the director of Borderland Sciences Research Foundation. Light was thought to be a talented writer as well as a clairvoyant. He claimed he was there with other civilians representing the religious, economic, and media communities to test the reception an alien visitor might elicit from the masses. Light claimed that he too saw 5 different craft that the military were allowed to inspect, and felt that Eisenhower was prepared to issue a statement to the public revealing we had been visited by extraterrestrials, though that statement never materialized. He also claimed to have witnessed a sense of utter confusion and panic among the military types there. The beings present were not the Greys most commonly depicted in popular culture, but instead were dubbed the Nordics, as they displayed characteristics most found in Scandinavian people: light hair and complexions, with blue eyes and colorless lips. They were able to communicate through telepathy, as no words were spoken but could be conveyed through thoughts. These Nordics are what are commonly known today as Pleiadians and are distant relatives of the human race. They are affiliated with the Intergalactic Space Confederation and are not allowed to interfere in human affairs unless those human affairs threaten the existence of the very galaxy. They're probably running Amazon. The Nordics offered to share their advanced technology with us in exchange for an elimination of all nuclear weapons. But it was said Eisenhower rejected that proposal, believing that the presence of nuclear weapons was paramount in maintaining peace and as a deterrent for potential aggression against us. Perhaps that would someday include alien races coming to Earth. It's also been said the Nordics offered us no technology because they were concerned about our capability of handling its complexity. I've seen human beings try to parallel park, and I agree with that summation. This meeting was confirmed by 3 prominent people who claim intimate knowledge of this interaction. One was the son of retired U.S. Navy Commander Charles Suggs. His father told him he accompanied Eisenhower when he spoke with 2 white-haired Nordics with pale blue eyes and colorless lips. They kept their distance from Ike and wouldn't allow him to approach them. The second is the son of the creator of the Learjet, John Lear, who flew Lockheed L-1011s as a captain. He spoke of an offer from this race of aliens as a condition to an agreement being eventually signed. They claimed they could eliminate a hostile race of Greys, but were rebuffed when they promised no technology in return. Wait, I thought they offered us technology. Is this why you can't put metal in a microwave oven? They left that part out. The third is 27-year veteran Master Sergeant Robert Dean, who had access to classified documents while working in the Intelligence Division under the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. Dean claimed that by 1964, there were 4 groups of aliens in total. One of them was the Greys, and the other looked as we do, likely the Nordics. Another was a race of giants, perhaps 6 to 9 feet tall, and while very humanoid looking, were quite pale with no discernible body hair. A third race displayed reptilian qualities. One assumes these are likely the reptilian race that's been theorized to live and walk among us. In their purest form, they have vertical pupils and lizard-like skin. So those were the 4 they knew about in 1964. I got nothing else. Moving on. The incident at Edwards Air Force Base was actually said to be the first of 2 and possibly 3 meetings between the Eisenhower administration and alien races in 1954. The second may have taken place at Holloman Air Base in New Mexico, but reports vary on that. The request for this meeting was made through the FBI, as it was said communication was made to them, quote, telepathically, end quote. This meeting was with the beings we commonly refer to now as Greys, with small, spindly frames, bulbous eyes, no ears, and large, misshapen heads. They claimed they heralded from a dying planet that soon would not be able to sustain life. This second meeting would result in an agreement between the aliens and the United States to allow the extraterrestrials to capture cattle and humans for medical experiments. Under the provision, all be safely returned to Earth. These would be conducted in secrecy, with the consent of the government, who would be supplied a database of whom or what was taken. It further states neither race would interfere in the affairs of the other, and they would supply us with alien technology. Nor would they sign another treaty with any other country on Earth. Colonel Philip Corso, who wrote the best-selling book The Day After Roswell, claims in his memoirs, quote, "We had negotiated a kind of surrender with them. As long as we couldn't fight them, they dictated the terms because they knew what we feared most was disclosure." So all of this in the end comes down to a really bad toothache and a quick presidential departure from Palm Springs. As you can imagine, the Eisenhower camp had a lot of splaining to do. And they did. The folks at the Eisenhower Library vehemently denied that any meetings with an alien race took place. Jim Leazaf, archivist at the Eisenhower Library, told the Washington Post, quote, "There's nothing in the archives that indicates that. We've had so many requests on that subject that we have a person who specializes in this." He added, "It's interesting how these stories have changed. Initially, the accounts claimed the president made a secret trip to Edwards Air Force Base to view the remains of aliens who had crashed at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Later stories then claimed he had actually visited with live aliens. The lack of a dental record from Dr. Purcell's office has helped fuel belief in this UFO encounter. Now, about that tooth. James Mixon is the dental historian and professor at the University of Missouri-Kansas City School of Dentistry. His article, A History of Dwight D. Eisenhower's Oral Health, was published in the November 1995 issue of the Bulletin of the History of Dentistry, and it's the definitive word on Ike's teeth. Citing the U.S. Surgeon General's records on Ike's medical and dental history, Mixon reports that on that fateful night of February 20th, 1954, Ike indeed chipped the porcelain cap of his upper left central incisor, and it was repaired by, yes, Dr. Francis A. Purcell. Now, none of this is likely to placate any conspiracy theorists who think that a deal was struck with an alien race in 1954. And to be honest, you can't prove a negative anyway. And whatever agreement was signed, it was broken decades ago. I mean, reports of cattle mutilations and alien abductions are literally in the millions now. If aliens have and are visiting Earth, let's hope that their mission is one of peace and enlightenment, because we could use a little bit of that right now. In the meantime, keep looking to the sky, visit your dentist regularly, and remember, always go over the fine print before you sign anything.